it's me, Minty. You might remember a video I did last year about warrior cats protagonists, and yeah, that video was pretty bad. I still hold all of the same opinions as I did in that video, but I just worded everything so weirdly. Then in the next chapter, you could have Hollyleaf go and talk to Hollywater as well. Hey, like mice? Heck yeah! Everyone loves mice. So now I have decided to make this video again. Only I will try to not sound so dumb. And I hope that I actually sound normal this time. This video ended up being longer than I expected. I hope you don't mind. If you suffer from short attention span due to brain rot or something, you could just watch this while cooking your food or something. It's actually very fun and very useful. You should try that sometime. So, I don't like the way Warrior Cats does its main characters. Even if I was borderline incoherent in my old video about this, you should still have understood that much. And while I don't have a magic easy fix, I believe there's a thing the story team could do to at least make the situation better. In my opinion, the way they're being done now is causing a lot of problems, and they can't continue like this. If you haven't noticed any problems with the modern background characters, you're lying. Most of us agree that the quality of Warrior Cat's background characters has gone down these last few arcs. They just don't bring the same energy as before. This is a big issue, as background characters are what help bring the story to life. Especially in Warrior Cats, they've been an important part to the books. They may not be the biggest characters, but they've still always given the series this feeling of greatness, that the world is wider than just our main characters. However, the background characters, who've always been an important crutch to the series, no longer fill up the purpose. We can see this in the newer books. Eagle Wing has spoken once during all of A Starless Clan. Leafshade has, like I've mentioned a few times, not appeared at all since The Place of No Stars, which, believe it or not, was released 3 years ago. Whoa, time goes fast. Compare this to one of the nobodies in The Power of Three, Hazeltail. She's not mind-blowing or anything, but she served her purpose. She filled the world. Basically, she participated in this society. The same can't be said for most background characters today. And this is not the case of just her. Take any ThunderClan background character from Power 3 and compare to today. They will all have more appearances and more developed personalities. Molepaw had more appearances in Power 3 than Leafshade in A Starless Clan, and he was literally dead. So the point is, background characters, who have always been important in Warriors, are not given the same importance as before and are completely forgotten about. Half of ThunderClan are just blank slates. This is all for a reason, but why? Why has this happened? A lot of people will immediately point out the large populations of the clans, and I agree, they're not wrong. I said in my first video on the subject that a clan should try to have around 25 cats per clan, plus minus 5. And I stand by that statement. It's completely right for the readers to criticize this. ThunderClan has 46 cats. SkyClan has 37. Way too high. But the population isn't the only problem. You might not know that in the beginning of The Last Hope, ThunderClan had 41 cats. That's almost as high as today. Yet we didn't see these problems, or at least not to the extent we see them today. And right now, RiverClan has only 24 cats, but are still suffering from undeveloped background characters. In fact, a lot of clans with lower populations than that of ThunderClan in Arc 4 are still suffering from this problem. Like SkyClan in Arc 7 and ShadowClan in Arc 7 and 8, though they improved a bit in Arc 8. What this tells us is that while population does play a part, it's not the biggest factor in the role background characters play in the series. Because believe it or not, killing off a character who has not said a word in 3 years won't magically make Eagle Wing speak 4 more lines every book. But what is the issue then? Well, the issue is that there is simply not enough space in the books for the background characters to participate more. Who knows, maybe Eagle Wing wants to speak 3 more lines every book. But now it's time for Frostpaw's perspective, so now we have to go to RiverClan. If we want to give background characters more time to speak, we'll have to create new space, aka more chapters. But the amount of chapters that would be needed to fix this problem would be too much. We can't deny that more space is needed. So, how can we make it so that ThunderClan gets more chapters, so Eagle Wing can finally exist? Well, say that one of the protagonists vanishes. Oh no, what will we do with all these extra chapters? We couldn't just give them to the 2 remaining characters. Yep, that's what I want to do. I believe this is what is causing a lot of these problems. We simply have too many main characters. This wasn't really an issue before, as the main characters all live together. But when they're living separate lives, it makes things a lot harder. We got to spend all of our time in ThunderClan, and because of that we got enough time to meet all of the background characters. Some of them, like Thornclaw, Berrynose, and Mousefur, are iconic and remembered by everyone. But mention one non-major character in Arc 7 and 8 that are even close to being as loved. If Whistlepod doesn't count as a major character, I'd say her, though she's not from a point of view clan. I guess I kinda like Gulsoup and So yeah, when the perspectives got shifted to different clans, the characters became less relevant, and the reason is simple: there's just no time to include them. When you have to tell a character's whole story in just 8 chapters, you don't get time to show the small everyday parts of life. It was easier when they lived together, as we could experience that character's story from another perspective, as well as their own. That is not possible anymore. To show just how difficult it is to include all characters as things currently are, I am going to do some math. Basically, I'm going to show you how many characters we need to fit into one chapter if we want every single character in the protagonist clans to appear at least once in a book. And spoiler warning, the numbers will say a lot. To start, I'll be showing you what the numbers were in The Last Hope, and to be clear, when writing the populations of the clans, I am going by the allegiances to make it as fair as possible. So Arc 4 ThunderClan has a higher population, and so that the modern clans have as low as possible. In The Last Hope, ThunderClan had 41 cats. They had 27 chapters, but I'll say 25, as that was the average chapter count for books in Dawn of the Stars. To include every character, you would have to have 1.64 cats every chapter. And if you think that's good, just take some deep breaths, cause it's about to go downhill. Now we're taking the point of view clans in a starless clan: ThunderClan, RiverClan, and ShadowClan. Every book has 24 chapters, which means every character has 8 chapters. We'll start with the lowest populated, RiverClan. At the start of Wind, they had 21 cats. To include every character, you would have to include 2.6 of them in every chapter. ShadowClan has 30 cats. They'd have to include 3.71 cats every chapter. And worst of all, ThunderClan, who with their 46 cats would have to include 5.75 characters every chapter. And like, what are you supposed to do? Have Plumstone, Honeyfur, Shellfur, Sorrelstripe, and Hollytuft barge into every secret meeting you have? And if you want to be petty and say, well, Sunbeam is also in ThunderClan now. First of all, shut up. 3 out of the current 5 books in a Starlit Clan have only had 1 protagonist in ThunderClan. 3 out of 4 if you don't count Shadow, which had no one. Second of all, even if you count with her chapters, we still get 2.9, which is still bad. But the thing that stood out to me most is RiverClan. RiverClan, with their 21 cats, are still doing so much worse than ThunderClan in Arc 4, despite only having half their amount of characters. There's just no way to blame this on just the population issue. RiverClan just doesn't have the chapters they need. I actually checked. For ThunderClan, ShadowClan, and RiverClan to be able to include their background characters just as much as ThunderClan in Omen of the Stars, they would need to have only 13 cats in their clans. It's just impossible to properly include the background characters with 3 protagonists from different clans. If RiverClan had 12 chapters, which they would if one of the other protagonists just stopped existing, the number of characters per chapter would be 1.75, almost as good as Omen of the Stars. And I'm not dumb. I'm aware that even with only 2 protagonists, the numbers will never be as good as before, but they'd be a big improvement at least. If ThunderClan got the ideal population of 25, I'd rather have the 2.08 that comes with 2 protagonists rather than the 3.1 that comes with 3. Just because things won't be as good as they once were, shouldn't mean that we don't try to improve them. I just talked a lot about the background characters, but the reasons I want only two main characters go deeper than that. It's not just about Eagle Wing or Fernstripe getting a personality, it's also about the protagonists themselves. What has happened in the Broken Code and the Starless Clan is that a lot of story gets too packed, too condensed, because there's just not enough chapters, and a lot of details get glossed over that shouldn't, and as a result the protagonists suffer. As an example, I'll talk about Bristlefrost. There are multiple places where her story clearly lacked due to lack of space. There's the obvious example of her getting feelings for Rootspring from out of nowhere, but then there's also how her mentor fades into the background as soon as the Silent Thaw starts. Like, excuse me, Rosebell was just one of the most important people in your life. What are you doing? Then there's also the lack of relationships with her family. She never interacts with her parents and not with her siblings after she becomes a warrior. A lot of things are just missing. Things that could have been included if she got a good extra 4 chapters per book. Yes, I also want to hear Plumstone and Honeyfur bitch some more about Nightheart. I also want to see Goldthorpe gossip. But not enough people bring up how the protagonists have suffered because they don't have enough chapters to properly tell their story. There's another perfect example in a very recent book that shows literally every problem I've talked about, and that's Thunder. From what I've seen, it was generally well received, but I don't get how. I will place it as the second worst book of this arc, right above Sky. The first problem is that none of the characters had enough chapters to tell their stories. They all needed more chapters. The 24 chapter rule absolutely had to be bent here. This felt like it needed something like 30 chapters, even if we only had 2 protagonists. That brings me over to the protagonists. What did Nightheart even do in that book? It did not develop his character in any way, at least not in a way that couldn't have been expressed from another character's perspective. Frostball's journey was way too crammed. The build up to it took too long, so they had to have the journey to the park and back to the clans in just around 10 chapters. A whole journey. Those are things we have whole books for. I forgot who in the world the characters at the park even were. I saw people talking about Bee, and I'm like, who? And I forgot the freaking name of one of the characters who followed Frostbite and Nightheart home. And he just ends up going home anyway and wins, so what was the point of even having him coming with them? And don't get me started on Sunbeam. My poor baby Sunbeam was so robbed in that book. They spent one book taking her from awkward outsider to full member of ThunderClan. She did not stand a chance with 8 chapters. She needed like double that. It constantly felt like things got skipped over, and in a moment where she's completely new in ThunderClan without Nightheart, they should have taken the chance to have her get to know the other cats better. They had a perfect chance to highlight the younger background characters and didn't take it. Sunbeam's trials felt rushed and too compacted. It felt like she was only doing the trials. We never got to see her actually learn more about everyday life of ThunderClan and its culture. There were not enough chapters to show her slowly becoming more ThunderClan. It just happened. Had there been more chapters for her, we could have seen more of her becoming comfortable in ThunderClan. And most importantly, they could have actually built up Cherryfall's little stunt. Her resentment towards Sunbeam came out of nowhere. It would have been nice to have some build-up, even if it's just a single line somewhere. And it would have been nice to have some kind of follow-up in Wind. And had we gotten more time to see Sunbeam connect with her new clan, the way she stood up to Berryheart at the end of the book would have been so much more meaningful. So, in summary, this book needed more chapters and would have been better without Nightheart as a protagonist. This whole arc would have been better without Nightheart as a protagonist, honestly. Taking in all I've said, it's all very clear. When we have 3 main characters in different clans, there are flaws you cannot look over, and the negatives heavily outweigh the positives. The background characters suffer, the protagonists suffer, and the story suffers. The way we have protagonists right now is just not working, and it's time for a change. Yes, there should be fewer characters, kill like half of them, please. But truth is that as long as we have 3 main characters in different clans, we won't have background characters that are anywhere near as good as they were in the old times. Unless the clans go through a massacre or something and end up with 13 cats each. So kill cats, yes, please note this only applies to fictional cats. But having 2 protagonists will have a bigger effect on the background characters as well as the protagonists themselves, and therefore the whole story. Now, I know this is not some magical trick that fixes the entire situation, There are multiple other things that need to be done if the series wants to reach its full potential. For example, more conscious efforts need to be put into actually including all these characters. The authors are already starting to do that, and it's great. I hope they keep going like that. I hope you all found this video very interesting. I've held these beliefs for a long time, and this was some long time frustrations bubbling up. I can't help but always think of how much better book X and Y would have been if it had only had two main characters. And maybe you think the same, do you? I would also really love to hear your opinions on this. Don't be afraid to speak your mind. I read all the comments, even long essays. With all of that said, thank you for watching this video. Like and subscribe if you haven't done that already. Share this video if you want to. I'll see you next time. Bye!